Is drinking raw milk safe like RFK Jr. suggests? Can you reduce a glucose spike if you eat your food in, quote unquote, the right order? I'm registered dietitian Abby Sharp. I host a nutrition myth-busting podcast called Bite Back with Abby Sharp. And those are just some of the questions I tackle with qualified experts on my show. There is so much food misinformation and disinformation out there, and it can feel impossible to know what's real and what's BS. On Bite Back, my goal is to help listeners create a pleasurable relationship with food, their body, and themselves, which in my opinion is the fundamental secret to good health. Listen to Bite Back wherever you get your podcasts.
Hi, I'm Richard Karn, and you may have seen me on TV talking about the world's #1 expandable garden hose. Well, the brand new Pocket Hose Copperhead with Pocket Pivot is here, and it's a total game changer. Old-fashioned hoses get kinks and creases at the spigot, but the Copperhead's Pocket Pivot swivels 360 degrees for full water flow and freedom to water with ease all around your home. When you're all done, this rust-proof anti-burst hose shrinks back down to pocket size for effortless handling and tidy storage. Plus, your super light and ultra-durable Pocket Hose Copperhead is backed with a 10-year warranty. What could be better than that? I'll tell you what, an exciting exclusive offer just for you.
For a limited time, you can get a free Pocket Pivot and their 10-pattern sprayer with the purchase of any size Copperhead hose. Just go to getcopperhead.com. That's getcopperhead.com for your 2 free gifts with purchase. Getcopperhead.com.
Message and data rates may apply. See terms for details.
All right, I know that we often talk a lot about government waste and taxpayers' waste and all that on the show, and it's not new to the media and it's not new to talk radio. This is something that I'm sure that if you would go back to the beginnings of talk radio, this would be a topic du jour on a regular basis. But this is another example of a story that I read this morning that really makes you shake your head and wonder if anything will ever actually change. The Nova Scotia government says only 60 tenants signed leases with landlords through a program that cost $1.3 million over 2 years. The government announced the program in 2023. It consisted of a partnership with a non-profit organization called HappyPad that operates an online home sharing platform. The initial results show the program wound up costing the government about $21,000 per lease. A spokeswoman for the Department of Growth and Development says HappyPad tracked user data indicating 400 people may have signed leases after using the platform. The department says about 1,800 renters and about 956 hosts signed up on HappyPad over 2 years. So this, again, folks, it just goes on and on and on and on. And we know federally, of course, there was an Auditor General report released a couple of weeks ago, which again, the same old story, right? Or whether it be apps that were originally meant to cost $70,000 ballooning to millions of dollars, and friends of government officials getting contracts and just absolutely substandard policy here, and no safeguards in place, no guardrails in place, and no accountability seemingly ever. Look, here in Halifax, recently in HRM, the Auditor General tabled a report, same thing. Just talking about, look, you go down the list, folks, of tenders, the tendering process, which is not nearly as robust as it should be, as it could be. I just think that it's almost like you almost feel like giving up at some point and saying, what's the point of complaining about this? Nothing ever changes. This is another example of this. And here is a government in Tim Houston. And look, Tim Houston's done some good things. And I'm not saying that he's a bad premier or anything like that. But what I am saying is that Tim Houston comes from an accounting background from the private sector. And I would hope that would translate into better policies by his government. but it just seems to be a culture that is within bureaucracies and the public sector in general. Again, and I know it's not across the board, and I don't like to generalize, but it's hard not to when you see these stories again and again and again. Just ridiculous. $1.3 million in a home sharing contract, and who was the biggest beneficiary of all of this? I would say it would be the company Happy Pad was. And look, it's almost like these companies take advantage of a lackluster accounting process, which seems to be, again, endemic and happens too much. So this is something that I want you to weigh in on when we open the phone lines today between 11 and 12. Also, Nova Scotia woman on income assistance who succeeded in forcing the province to pay for her air conditioner says she's frustrated other low-income people won't get the same relief. Last October, the 44-year-old woman from New Glasgow won an appeal to receive provincial funding for an air conditioner because of health conditions. She argued successfully that without the small unit she purchased last summer, heat would cause her chronic pain to intensify. Now, the aforementioned Tim Houston talked about when campaigning about looking at this issue, but a spokesperson recently says that or this week rather, says for the Department of Social, the spokesperson for the Department of Social Development said on Tuesday that the government was not planning to change this policy. So another thing that I'll ask you to weigh in on, should the province cover the cost of air conditioners for some people, at least on on income assistance? And lots of other things to get to as well, folks, in the pile. I've got all kinds of things to get to. And Steve Murphy will join me here in studio between 10:30 and 11, which will obviously inspire, I think, some great conversation and perhaps some things that you might want to respond to as well during the call-in segment. So I got a long list of things to talk with Steve Murphy about. So look forward to that chat as well. And it's Thursday, the last Thursday of the month. That means we will, by tradition now, be having Jeff Goodall run Sandon View Animal Care Center. Our Ask the Vet segment goes from noon until 1, so your pet-related questions, always popular, always lots of calls, and I look forward to hearing from many of you during our Ask the Vet segment between noon and 1 today. So thanks so much for tuning in and listening. I'd like to thank Vanessa Van Ness as well. On the other side of the glass at the control board's doing a fine job, as always. All right, joining me now for a chat to talk some U.S. politics is Mark Brewer, University of Maine political science professor. Mark Brewer, thanks for joining the show. We appreciate it, as always.
Todd, I'm always happy to do it.
All right, so lots and lots to talk about. First off, I want to get your take on this story about the alligator Alcatraz, and it's part of ICE and the deportation plans for the president of the United States. Florida is detaining migrants in the new Everglades facility dubbed Alligator Alcatraz, and this story is almost too hard to believe, in my opinion. Mark, what's your takeaway on this?
Well, I would agree with you, but I guess the one thing I would say on this is Donald Trump and his advisors, know that the immigration crackdown, deporting people who are here illegally, getting rid of dangerous criminals off the streets. They know all of that for Trump is a huge winning issue and has been, right? I mean, he's been riding that issue in many ways for the last, 8+ years at this point. So it's not surprising to see, Trump and his supporters and people who want to curry favor with Trump and people who want to look to replicate Trump's political success to turn to something immigration related for a political winner, because it always works. At least so far, it's immigration has yet to be an issue that has bit Donald Trump, right? He's rode that and rode it and rode it. And so, you want to double and triple and quadruple down on something that's, kind of almost at this point a guaranteed winner for him. So I guess in that sense, it doesn't surprise me at all.
Okay, but the idea that it's almost as though it's minimizing human life or whatever. Not almost by saying that. Look, we don't need to worry about a perimeter when you've got pythons and alligators awaiting you if in fact you escape. I mean, look, I just find that there's a dehumanizing factor going on here, but again, to your point, it plays to the base, right? It plays to a large portion of the United States, unfortunately.
Well, certainly a large portion of Trump supporters. There's no doubt about that. And this isn't, this alligator Alcatraz in Florida is new, but the theme itself isn't new. I mean, right? It's the same thing of, we're going to deport these people to this prison in Ecuador, right? Which is supposed to be, one of the world's most dangerous, most punitive prisons, right? And so he does that. And we have the photo op down there with Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem. So he did that. He talked about wanting to reopen the original Alcatraz, right? Which at this point I don't think is going to happen, but I guess you can't rule anything out. Yeah. But so this pattern of, kind of playing up on this theme of, not only are we going to crack down on these dangerous people who are here illegally, but we're really going to punish them, right? We're going to really put them into some harsh conditions to teach them a lesson. So he's done this before. My sense is he'll do it again. Is there a dehumanizing element to it? I think you're absolutely right on that. But he's done that before too, and not just with immigrants. So, we shouldn't be surprised at it. I mean, we should still, kind of react and assess and react how you choose to do so. But the surprise factor, we shouldn't be. We should, this is well within the Trump playbook at this point.
Okay, when it comes to deporting people, I often get emails from people saying that Barack Obama administration conducted more of these deportations than Trump has to this point. Is that true or no?
I believe it is still true, because there's deportations happening every day. I don't know that it is entirely. I suppose there will be a point if Trump keeps up at this pace where he will pass Obama. But the last time I checked, that statement was true. I think what's different with Trump from Obama and from Biden as well, because, the Biden administration was doing a fair amount of deportations during his one term. What's different, at least in some cases with Trump, is there is a complete and utter disregard for, in some cases at least, rule of law, proper procedure. People are being deported without having a say in court. Trump has went in and cleaned out a bunch of immigration judges that he didn't necessarily agree with. And those are the people who are supposed to hear a lot of these cases. And so, yes, Obama did this quite frequently, and yes, Joe Biden did as well. But as far as I know, they always followed kind of the proper procedure, rule of law. People had their day in court. There was due process. The Trump administration regularly is willing to just completely ignore due process protections, and that's what makes this different.
Okay, and is there nobody within his administration or nobody surrounding him that takes issue with this on the Republican side of things?
Well, certainly it doesn't seem like there's anybody within the administration that does. He made sure of that in the second term so far, that he wouldn't repeat the mistake or one of the mistakes he made in his first term, which was having people around him who weren't afraid to tell him no, or to tell him when something was not a good idea or something was illegal. He went to great pains to not have people like that in his second administration. As far as whether there are any other Republicans who are willing to tell him these things to his face or on the record, they seem to be few and far between. I mean, I suspect there are a fair number that think these things, but they know that it's politically risky, if not politically suicidal, to say it, so they don't say it.
Mm. Okay, what's the latest on the tariff front? Is Trump he's doubling down on tariffs when it comes to what's the latest when it comes to his policy on tariffs? Any change on that?
I think it's unclear, right? I mean, I think there hasn't been, at least in the U.S., in the last week to 2 weeks, there hasn't really been a lot of tariff talk. The narrative here has been largely surrounded by the situation between Israel and Iran that the U.S. inserted itself into. So that's been the big focus of attention. There was a little bit of attention the last couple of days on the NATO summit, where Trump seems to have, if not done a 180, at least somewhat of a turn, and is now embracing NATO. But tariffs at least the discussion of tariffs seemed to have gone on hold. So as far as I know, the plan is Trump's plan is still in place, but we're in a holding pattern, and he's waiting for deals, and maybe we'll get deals. So I think we're kind of where we were 10 days ago, I think. At least publicly. Maybe there's stuff going on behind the scenes that we don't know about, but publicly it seems like we're in the same place.
Okay, to the Middle East and Iran and Israel and the ceasefire. I find it a bit ironic that Trump is brokering a ceasefire supposedly just a couple of days after dropping authorizing 3 strikes on Iranian nuclear facilities. And how difficult is that to sell, I guess, internationally and to the Americans when it comes to brokering a ceasefire? Yet he obviously is drugged the Americans and into this quite a bit.
Yeah, internationally, I think it's almost like he doesn't care internationally, and in some ways that might be rational for him because the United States is still, maybe it's not a sole hegemon, but it's still, one of the great global powers, if not the strongest global power at the moment. And one of the competitors on this, which would be Russia, he seems to, I think there seems to be an unspoken deal between him and Putin right now. He's kind of leaving Putin alone, and Putin's not going to back Iran on this, right? I mean, the Russians have been backers of the Iranian regime. They're not. They've been kind of quiet on this. China, which is another supporter of Iran, hasn't really shown a whole lot of appetite for interjecting itself here. So, and Western Europe, for good or for ill, has fallen behind Trump on this. So I think internationally, he's not having a whole lot of problem with this. Domestically is a different story because this is one issue where, we've seen a split in some of Trump's supporters on this front and some of his strongest supporters. And this is one case where we have seen some Republicans who step up, right? I mean, a lot of, Trump's diehard base supported him, at least in part, because he has been relatively consistent in saying he's going to keep the United States out of wars though there's no benefit to the U.S., right? We're not going to get involved in these foreign policy escapades that previous presidents of both parties have gotten the nation in since the end of World War II. He says, we've said repeatedly, Trump has said, we're not the world's policeman. We're just not doing that. And a lot of his base has been supportive of that. He seems to have reversed course, at least for policy here, with interjecting the U.S. and Iran. And some of his strongest supporters, people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, have come out publicly and said, no, this is not a good idea, right? Steve Bannon doesn't like this idea, doesn't like the policy. Whereas some, more, I don't want to call them traditional Republicans, but what we would have called neocons during the George W. Bush period have come out and said, yeah, this was the right move. This should have been done. People like Marco Rubio. So, there's a split domestically on this, and Trump's trying to navigate that because he hasn't really seen that very much. And I suspect that could be in part what's going on with the vacillating moves by the Trump administration. I mean, they vacillate a lot just under normal circumstances, so sometimes there's no rhyme or reason behind it. But this time I suspect he's trying to thread a needle here to keep, the disparate parts of his base happy or at least mollified on an issue where they pretty strongly disagree.
Well, and I suppose where will his base go, right? I mean, they're not going to abandon him, or might they potentially at midterms? Might this emerge at midterms? These types of policies and how people vote.
Well, I think you're right that there's no immediate danger of abandonment of Trump by his base, even if they're not happy on this particular issue. I can't imagine that they're going to abandon Trump over one instance. But and so in that case, there's probably not a whole lot of impact in terms of midterms. But let's say this situation escalates, and let's say that it spreads from Iran to other parts of the Middle East, and the U.S. increases its involvement. That could change things, right? If it stays where it is now, it's a one-off. There's these bombings of the 3 nuclear facilities. There's ceasefire negotiations. Let's say Trump's statements are right. There's conflicting intelligence reports on this, but let's say Trump is right that Iran's nuclear efforts, I think he's used the word obliterated, or let's say they've been significantly curtailed, and it kind of stops there. Then I think he's politically fine, and actually he could benefit. Could show him, it could end up being a beneficial action for him. If it escalates from here, that could be a different story as we head into midterms. So I think it's too early to say what the political fallout of this will be, because we don't know how this is going to end.
Mark, listen, I know you're busy. I appreciate it. Thanks for doing it, and we'll talk again.
All right, sounds good, Todd. Thanks.
All right, take care. Mark Brewer, University of Maine political science professor. A Nova Scotia couple sold everything, now lives in an Airstream trailer. We'll discuss this with one of those, with the wife when we come back. All right, I saw the story on the CTV website. A Nova Scotia couple sold everything and now lives in an Airstream trailer. I thought I had to reach out and talk to somebody about this. Both of them, but in this case, the wife, Alicia Simms, joins me to talk about all this and their experience. Alicia, thanks for joining us.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Todd. It's a pleasure to be here.
All right, so just let everybody know how this happened. What happened here?
That's a really good question. When I met my husband before we were married, we had just kind of talked about our visions of the future, and he had mentioned before he met me, he had kind of planned to, or I should say, dreamed about buying a small Airstream trailer and just kind of traveling around living the bachelor life. I thought, oh yeah, that's an interesting idea. And then we decided to give an RV a try. So we rented a 24-foot RV for a couple of months, and it was like, I think maybe I could do this. It's had a lot more storage. The freedom was really fun. So we spent the next year or two kind of researching what kind of trailer we could maybe fit our life into, because at the time we had a 2,400 square foot house. And it kind of snowballed from there. We found the right layout, cruising through YouTube videos, and then we made the plunge and bought ourselves one and sold the house.
Wow. Any regrets?
No, I got to say, it's funny. When we said we would start it, I told him I'd give him a year, and we bought a piece of land that we'll eventually build on. But we're going into year 3, and it's just been amazing to be mobile and mortgage free and have so much less bills and financial responsibility. So you've got so much more energy and money to live life and get out on adventures.
Were you worried going in that you said you'd give it a year? Did you have some hesitation? I'm sure you must have, right? Big step.
Definitely. I mean, the hardest part was definitely what was a Canadian winter going to be like. That was probably our biggest hurdle we had to get over. So we actually decided to build a garage, and we put the Airstream in there for the winter rather than trying to winterize it. But hopefully this year is going to be the year that we actually take the trailer on the road for the winter and get out of Canada and really explore that nomadic lifestyle. But the hardest part was definitely the shoulder seasons. We started in the summer with the RV and with the trailer initially, and it's a lot easier to do then when you don't have coats and boots, and because you have no closet, no porch, no mudroom. But no regrets at all, really. I mean, some days are better than others for sure, like anything, same as home ownership, but definitely no regrets, and looking forward to what other adventures we can get up to.
All right, so is this something that you plan on? Do you have a 5-year plan, 10-year plan, or is it kind of open-ended at this point?
It's pretty open-ended, to be honest. Everyone keeps asking us, how are the building plans going? When are you going to build? And each year we just keep pushing it. We thought we'd build in 2025, and then we thought, well, maybe 2026. And now we're halfway through 2025, and we're thinking, well, maybe 2027. I don't even know how to explain it. I feel like everyone should have to go through a social experiment where they pare down their life into 185 square feet of living space, because that's what we have. And you really evaluate what you actually need in your kitchen to cook, or what you need in clothes, and where you could be. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah, and also you're really going to find out what type of ground your marriage is on as well in a hurry.
It's so true. Yeah. We have joked definitely that trailer life is not for new couples, that's for sure, because the washroom has absolutely no sound insulation whatsoever and is about 6 inches from your bed. So new couples, you're going to get real comfortable real quick.
Yeah, for sure. So what advice do you give to people who are considering this?
That's a good question. Definitely do your research. If you can do the rental thing first, that really gave us a good leg up on what to expect. Like, we started with an RV, and we knew, RV is not what we want. We want to be able to tow a trailer and then drop it and go explore, because trying to take the RV definitely was harder on gas, and it's a lot bigger. So if you want to actually get outside of campgrounds and go explore the places you're visiting, it's a lot harder to do in that. But I think a rental would be a great place to start. And if you're someone like me that had trouble separating from the stuff they've built up, selling the house, before we sell the house, if anyone's sold, you got to pack stuff up and stage the house. That was a real good way to figure out what you maybe don't need, because I had stuff that was boxed up for a couple of months. And then by the time we sold the house and went back to it, it was like, maybe I don't need these 25 picture frames I had up on the walls, or these vases and candlesticks and things like that. So if you're someone like me who loves your stuff, that's a pretty good way to be able to pare down and sever that emotional connection you think you have.
Yeah, and it also allows you to, I guess, time the market a little bit when you do want to buy, because you have the flexibility if the market's not what you want it to be, you have that. Or if you don't want to necessarily, you're not rushed to purchase something. Is my point.
Yeah, absolutely. Like we thought about this first in the height of COVID, when people were selling for like top dollar. I'm like, oh, now would be a great time to sell, but we haven't figured out exactly what trailer we want. And then the order time on the trailers at that point was really far down the line because everything was slowed down. So we said, it's better to wait and get what we want. So we did. And it was definitely helpful to be able to sell the house and go into a trailer, not worry about buying a new property or building something. And oh man, I think more people really need to consider the downsizing in trailer life, because I think it's not what people think it is. Like, we've had just some incredible adventures going around Nova Scotia even, let alone other places we've gone across Canada and throughout North America. Like, it's so great to just be able to take your home with you everywhere you go, and you just open up your door to a brand new place, but you still have your own bed and bathroom. It's really nice. Yeah,
for sure. And all right, so as far as the timeline goes, you're not sure. You'll decide going down the road as to how long you want to continue in this mode of living. But I think it's fantastic, and I think that it's an interesting story. And congratulations on finding something unique.
Thank you so much. We're pretty happy with it, and we love sharing our story on social feeds and YouTube, so people can follow along with the shenanigans and see if we actually do build or just keep living down the road.
All right. So how do people follow you on social media or YouTube? Just direct people so that they can do so.
Awesome. Yeah, you can find me on Alicia E Tattoo, all one word, lowercase, on Instagram and YouTube, and those are the places you're going to find us the most.
Alicia E Tattoo.
That's right.
Okay. Thanks, Alicia. Good story. Talk soon. Talk
again.
Thank
you so much.
Well, keep us in touch. How things go.
I will, absolutely. Thank you so much.
All right, take care. Alicia Simms. That's an interesting story. Steve Murphy, when we come back.
Hi, I'm Richard Karn, and you may have seen me on TV talking about the world's #1 expandable garden hose. Well, the brand new Pocket Hose Copperhead with Pocket Pivot is here, and it's a total game changer. Old-fashioned hoses get kinks and creases at the spigot, but the Copperhead's Pocket Pivot swivels 360 degrees for full water flow and freedom to water with ease all around your home. When you're all done, this rust-proof anti-burst hose shrinks back down to pocket size for effortless handling and tidy storage. Plus, your super light and ultra-durable Pocket Hose Copperhead is backed with a 10-year warranty. What could be better than that? I'll tell you what, an exciting exclusive offer just for you.
For a limited time, you can get a free pocket pivot and their 10-pattern sprayer with the purchase of any size Copperhead hose. Just go to getcopperhead.com. That's getcopperhead.com for your 2 free gifts with purchase. Getcopperhead.com.
Message and data rates may apply. See terms for details.
All right, time to have a chat with Steve Murphy, CTV special correspondent, analyst, commentator, former anchor, a friend of the show, of course. Steve Murphy, welcome.
I want to let your viewers, your listeners know just how successful this program. Am I allowed to talk about ratings?
Sure,
you talk about ratings?
Sure.
Highest ratings ever in this time slot.
Yeah.
For this program. Congratulations, Todd.
Thank you, Steve.
Yeah.
I appreciate
and
that.
to your listeners, congratulations.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And
It's amazing.
and a lot of first-time callers.
Yeah.
Which is great. And we encourage that because we know that it takes a lot for somebody to pick up a phone and engage in a talk show. That is not an easy thing to do.
When I was doing talk radio on CJCH many years ago, we used to say that I think 5% of your listeners will ever call. Now, that may have changed.
Yeah.
But the point hasn't changed, and that is way more people listen than ever call. And it has to be that way. But it's great when a lot of new voices come in, and I'm hearing lots of new voices, although I love hearing the, shall we say, the more experienced voices. Gloria McCluskey said the other day that she had a nightmare that she was back on council.
Yeah, I heard that.
I think some of the people who listen to the Veto Show kind of wish she was back on council, and not because they always agree with Mayor McCluskey. But you never wonder where you stand with Gloria.
That's true.
You know, she hasn't got any talking points.
No, that's right.
And you know how I feel about talking points for politicians.
For sure. Yeah, no, well, I appreciate that. I'm surprised that it would be 5%. I would think that it would be less than that.
Probably.
I've heard it's like something like 1% to 2% or something like that.
It may well be. But the point is, most people will never call.
Yeah.
They'll never call.
And I do believe that most people who call have an axe to grind.
True.
You know, people aren't going to call to be complimentary generally to a policy.
No, although, and I know you've done this, and I used to do it on the old hotline show. Occasionally, we'd run a show, and you would say you can call and not complain, or you can compliment anybody on anything. You would be surprised, I think, too, and maybe you have been in the past, at the number of people who do have good things to say when you open up the lines and get the others, you know, into the other lane. Oh, as long as it's not a bike lane. No, but get the other people into another lane.
Yeah, I've done that in the past where I've said, let's talk positive things. What's positive in your community?
Right.
And I don't think that you want to have a steady diet of that, but once in a while it's fun.
Well, it comes back to a question that I think you're probably asked. I know I am, and that is people say often, why is the news so negative in nature? And the answer is really pretty simple, and that is we live in a society where most things work pretty well. So when things happen as they're supposed to, it's not newsworthy. It's when there are problems and dysfunctions that it becomes newsworthy and we talk about it. But it's because most things work well. That's not to say we don't have problems. Look, we've got all kinds of problems. But our problems here are relatively modest compared to many of the problems of the world. So we spend a lot of time trying to make a good society closer to perfect. We're never going to get there. But we do complain about things that don't work because so many things do work reasonably well.
Well, when it comes to bike lanes, some would say that that's trivial. And I hear this from time to time when I'm out around talking to people. They say, I love the show, but I'm getting tired of people complaining about bike lanes. I hear that. Right? But it's grassroots stuff that people just love to discuss, right? It impacts them locally. It impacts them directly.
It is, and you don't have to be a cyclist or a motorist to have an opinion on bike lanes because there's another larger issue here, and the bike lanes and their effect on transportation and so on. That's an issue to be sure. But there's a larger issue, and that is that should political leaders pursue policies that seem to be at odds with the desire of so many people? And you and your listeners and many of the callers on this program have crystallized this more to an issue of government responsibility and the expenditure of funds than the value of bike lanes. They're actually two separate issues. Clearly, they're connected. But there is a larger issue about how tax money is spent and whether any elected body, a city council or the legislature or parliament, ought to spend money on projects that are not widely supported by the public. And to me, that is a separate and meritorious issue, and it is the one that the mayor has addressed. And it is the one that I was glad to see Tony Mancini come back at this, and I think there are all kinds of political reasons why it was done this way. But the issue is worth discussing from the point of view of the expenditure of public funds, particularly because the price tag has gone up exponentially from, 25 million to 100 million. So, and how much further will it go? We don't know. That's why it is worth taking a look at how the money is being spent.
Do you think that ideologically there are some members of council that it wouldn't matter what the number would balloon to, they would say go forward? Yeah. And to me, I have an issue with that. I think that's irresponsible.
Well, okay, I can see why you would say that. I can also see why there are some people who are philosophically committed to an idea and they want to bring it across the finish line. Look, we had a talk on this program many years ago about Sean Cleary after he made some comment, and many people said, "Oh, he ought to be thrown off council or he ought to be defeated." Look, I'm not going to criticize any political leader for stating their opinion, even if I don't agree with their opinion. I'm glad we have robust debates, but there is a point at which the views of the majority or the large number of people we hear from, at least, need to be seriously considered. And I think it's fair to criticize Councillor Cleary or bike lanes without getting too personal about it. I don't like it when I hear this discourse reduced to shot taking. That's not helpful. And shot taking at the mayor or at members of council by others, maybe it's part of politics, but it's not a particularly helpful part.
Right.
Discuss the issue whatever the issue is, on the merits of the issue, not the personality of the person making the case. And if you disagree with Sean Cleary, the one thing I'll say about him, and I had him on here a few times when I was filling in for you, he'll sit here and take the slings and arrows. I don't think the guy's, I don't think he's afraid.
No.
And that's a good thing, even if you don't agree with him.
Recently, I had Sean Cleary on the show, and he suggested that the sources have told him that the province is going to table legislation which will amend the Halifax Charter in the fall, which would then empower the mayor with strong mayor powers, and went on to say that he feels as though that the relationship between the Premier and Andy Fillmore is one that the Premier would then use Andy Fillmore as a proxy of sorts to do the province's bidding. That to me was quite a provocative statement. What
do you think?
Yeah, I was quite shocked by it, and I think rightfully so. What are your thoughts on that type of comment?
Well, let's begin with the basics, and that is that the municipal government is entirely the creature of the provincial government. The idea that we have three levels of government in Canada is not actually correct. We have two, the federal government and the provincial government. Municipal government exists only as a subsidiary or a creature of the province. So all of the power that is exercised by municipal government comes from the legislature. So if the Premier's in charge of the legislature and the legislature's in charge of the city or the municipality, we call it a city, it's actually a regional municipality. If the Premier's in charge of one level of government and one level of government is in charge of another level of government, what does that tell you? The province is in charge. Mm-hmm. So does Mayor Fillmore want more power? I don't know. I think he's been asked. I think he's willing to accept more power. Yeah. Does the Premier want him to have more power? I think there's pretty good indication through what we're hearing from sources that he does. And if the Premier wants him to have it, he's going to have it. Here's why I have a problem with it. The time to propose this was before the elections, not afterward. Yeah. Before Mr. Fillmore was elected mayor and before Mr. Houston was reelected. If you want to make a change of that kind, propose it to the voters before an election, not immediately after.
Well, this falls under the ask forgiveness, not permission category, does it not?
It does, but this would represent such a fundamental change that the voters ought to know that it's coming. Mm-hmm. And again, Mr. Fillmore did not ask for strong mayor powers when he was campaigning. Premier Houston did not suggest he was going to confer strong mayor powers when he was campaigning for re-election, and these elections were less than a year ago. They had ample opportunity to make this clear to the voters. Again, I happen to think that stronger municipal government would be a good thing, and stronger powers for the mayor might also be a good thing. And in fact, I'll go so far as to say they would be a good thing in certain circumstances. But what's not a good thing is imposing this upon voters within months of elections in which the voters could have been consulted about whether they want this.
Yeah. What are the circumstances in which you think it would be good to have increased powers for the mayor?
Well, for example, the mayoralty model we have now in the Halifax region makes the mayor essentially a member of council elected at large who chairs meetings. I can see arguments that favor a sort of more executive-style mayoralty where certain decisions can be made by the mayor's office. And I'm not saying we have to adopt the Ontario model, which is clearly the one that Mr. Houston is looking at, because he, as you've probably noticed, he and Doug Ford are very similar figures politically. Yeah, they're pals, but philosophically, I think they're very, very aligned as well. I think we could look at leadership roles that would give the mayor the power to make certain decisions on certain things. For example, should perhaps the mayor bring forward a budget and have the council vote on it? I think we could consider that model, because look at the way budgeting is done now. And your callers talk about it often. Look how long the budgeting process takes. The other complaint I hear on this program, and I heard it back in the old days on the Hotline show, is that the bureaucrats have too much power. Yeah. And that's because under the charter, the city is actually led by the CAO, not by the mayor. Mm-hmm.
All right, so deferring to staff, this is something that you're getting at, that I get regular complaints from people about our councillors who come in on Mondays and sit down and take calls, and I appreciate that. That's great that they do that.
I commend every member of council who's done it.
I think it's fantastic that they do that and are willing to do so. But again, a lot of we'll have to defer to staff for that, or deferring to staff. Do you think that happens too often, or is that are they left with not a lot of choice?
It happens too often, but it happens too often because it has to happen too often. This is the kind of government we have. We have an administration that is run by the chief administrative officer. Yeah. I mean, council's role is largely consultative. There's not a legislative power there. Council can pass bylaws, but not laws. Mm-hmm. So, this is why I say I think there is a good case to be made for stronger municipal government and giving more power to elected officials who actually control the services that are delivered directly to people. Police services, fire services, garbage collection, water, sewage, all of these things, streets, parks. These are the services we all use every day. They're delivered by a municipal government that really doesn't have a lot of power.
Yeah.
So, I could see more power for municipal government. But I don't like this idea that within months of a municipal election and months of a provincial election in which this issue could have been brought to the people, that now we're talking about a fundamental change in the delivery of public service by the province over the municipality, and neither the mayor nor the premier presented this as a proposal or an idea to the voters. Yeah. They had the chance.
Yeah. I think when it comes to municipalities and municipal politicians, we like to have colorful characters, people with some.
Anybody come to mind?
Well, no, but it's true though. Like a Sean Cleary,
sure.
like some of these people.
Sure.
I remember back in St. John, of course, that council was notorious, as you know, for having people who were off the cuff, right?
That's a good way to put it.
That's right.
But there were some outliers there. No, I think you're right. Municipal politics generally tends to attract big personalities. Yeah. Municipal politics attracts some big personalities, sure.
Yeah, and the fact that they're not whipped by partisanship, I think is refreshing.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
But on the other side, if you're not being whipped by a party philosophy and you can say whatever you want, sometimes you run afoul of people who don't like what you're saying.
Yeah.
But that's part of the process.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
You can also get a seat on council with very few votes.
Yeah.
And I take nothing away from the legitimacy of the win, but Mr. Fillmore got 42.5% of the vote. Mm-hmm. Most people didn't vote for him.
Yeah.
Now, the largest number did, so he won by plurality. That's the way our system works.
Yeah.
But that cannot be called a majority mandate. It can be called a legitimate mandate.
Mm-hmm.
But, Mike Savage, even Peter Kelly, they got way more hard votes than Mr. Fillmore did.
Yeah.
Doesn't take away from his legitimacy. But in terms of the magnitude or the density of his mandate, it's different.
Yeah, Sean Cleary, I think, got less than 30% in his district. So.
Less than 30% in a district where I think the turnout was probably somewhere between 30 and 40%.
Yeah.
But again, I fault the voters for that. And I've made this argument, I think, here before, but I certainly have in Murphy's Logic on television. When you don't vote, you are having a say. Yeah. And the say is let everybody else decide.
Sure.
So don't call me later and complain about the outcome if you didn't vote.
Okay, lots of other things to get to. We will be back with Steve Murphy. All right, time is flying with Steve Murphy here in studio. Always does fly. Nova Scotia Power. This is something that I wanted.
I knew this was coming.
Well, again, this was hugely impactful. The phone lines were jammed here for almost 2 weeks. People irate about this.
Mm-hmm.
Nova Scotia Power this week announced that they're going to extend creditor protection to 5 years and expanding who was involved in all of this. What's your kind of broad strokes takeaway on this whole thing?
Well, it's way worse than they thought or knew or said.
Yeah.
So how much worse is it? Well, it appears to be a lot worse because expanding the credit monitoring from 2 to 5 years, I think, is the proper thing to do, and I commend them for doing it. The revelation that even non-customers' information or non-current customers' information may have been hacked is cause for real concern because there are a lot of non-customers. And the longer ago you dealt with Nova Scotia Power, the greater the likelihood that you did provide your social insurance number, because it used to be quite common that in order to get a service of that sort from a utility, for example, you had to provide your SIN before legislation was changed to say that you don't have to provide the SIN, and they don't have to provide the service, by the way. So I'm concerned about that. I'm also concerned by the simple reality that no organization, I shouldn't say no, I would assume that most organizations, governmental, private, public, do not ever intentionally, willingly get rid of data.
Why is that? Because the data is valuable?
Yep.
Yeah.
Data is valuable, and we're seeing it more so now than ever, but data has always been valuable. But imagine this. In the days of innocence before computers and before cell phones and all the gadgets and so on that we have now, all of that information was recorded on paper. So when you called to open an account at what we used to call the Nova Scotia Light and Power or Nova Scotia Power or Maritime Tel, Alliant, or any service provider, it was all recorded on paper. At some point, it was all digitized because the hackers aren't breaking into filing cabinets.
Right.
They're breaking into digital files. Yeah. So a lot of that old information was intentionally digitized and preserved. So the extent of this, I think, is very, very large. I, for one, am adamant about one thing, and I think your callers will agree with this. And I'm not sure that we can guarantee this, but the ratepayers should not pay one penny for any of this. And any loss of funds that derives from a customer's accounts because of the breach ought to be the responsibility of Nova Scotia Power.
How do we make sure that doesn't happen? I don't know that there's a mechanism that would allow that to not happen.
There is a regulator.
Yeah.
I would call on the regulator to exercise the full extent of their regulatory authority, and I'm not sure that happens. And again, I'm not a lawyer, and I've heard from plenty of lawyers who say there can't be a class action, and Wayne McKay is one of them, and I have the greatest respect for Wayne, who I consider a friend in addition to someone I've interviewed many times. I think Wayne's probably right on the law. But the regulator ought to make it clear that these costs cannot be downloaded to the consumer. My great concern about this, and I said this on television a few weeks ago, my great concern is not only that there was a hack or a breach, but that it was so long between the breach and Nova Scotia Power becoming aware of the breach. Yeah. There was a period of time during which they didn't know.
Yeah.
That's a serious problem.
Yeah. But people don't have a whole lot of faith in the regulator.
True.
Yeah.
People don't have a whole lot of faith in the regulator. And I'm suddenly hearing, and I know that another radio station in town that's owned by the taxpayers did an interview the other day about the possibility of having Nova Scotia Power be nationalized or municipalized or provincialized, taken over by government.
Yeah. Well, how realistic is that, considering the shareholders and the buyout? That would be and the bill would be massive.
Yeah, I was doing talk radio during the time when the province owned Nova Scotia Power, and it was so politicized that they got rid of it because no politician wanted to be responsible for power rates. Yeah. And by the way, nobody in their right mind wants to be responsible for power rates. Yeah. But if it isn't going to be the private sector, it's going to be the government. But government-owned utilities, you come from New Brunswick as I did, that is a massive albatross, a financial albatross around the taxpayer's neck. Take a look next door before you decide you want to do it here.
Yeah, but it also has assets, too, with LaPro, but it has aging assets.
It has liabilities. It has liabilities. All of its principal generators are aging out. Point LaPro, Mac to Quack, Beldoon, all of these big generators. New Brunswick, a huge generator power compared to us. Yeah. But all of their generation capacity is aging out.
What are your thoughts quickly on Wind West, since we're talking energy? I know that you got about a minute or so left to talk with that. Will that ever see the light of day, Wind West?
I hope so.
Yeah.
I like the big dream. I like one thing I really admire about Premier Houston is I think he's willing to dream some big dreams. And, sometimes dreams don't come true, but sometimes they do. And I would commend the Premier for thinking big on this. And, people I know in the field, engineers and others, say that this is conceivably possible. Now, it doesn't help that the President of the United States is down on wind power and he's down on solar power and he wants to, and by the way, I'm one who believes that we need to find compatibilities among all power sources. We're nowhere near ready to turn off carbon-based power, gasoline, oil, diesel. We're just not. We're not. We're going to have to find a way to use it. There's no point in pretending otherwise. And those who criticize Alberta are, if I might say so, hypocrites of the highest order. We're all still burning carbons, and we ought to find a way to accommodate Alberta's ability to provide them. By the same token, I love the way the Premier is musing about this publicly. I hope it can happen.
We almost got through the whole half hour without mentioning Trump, who wasn't mentioned by name.
I did not mention his name or his hair color or anything.
That's right.
Which is tempting.
Anyway, nonetheless, Steve, always great, my friend. Thanks so much for coming in.
Always a pleasure to be on with you. Thanks to your listeners.
Okay, your calls when we come back.
Hi, I'm Richard Karn, and you may have seen me on TV talking about the world's #1 expandable garden hose. Well, the brand new Pocket Hose Copperhead with Pocket Pivot is here, and it's a total game changer. Old-fashioned hoses get kinks and creases at the spigot, but the Copperhead's Pocket Pivot swivels 360 degrees for full water flow and freedom to water with ease all around your home. When you're all done, this rust-proof anti-burst hose shrinks back down to pocket size for effortless handling and tidy storage. Plus, your super light and ultra-durable pocket hose Copperhead is backed with a 10-year warranty. What could be better than that? I'll tell you what, an exciting exclusive offer just for you.
For a limited time, you can get a free pocket pivot and their 10-pattern sprayer with the purchase of any size Copperhead hose. Just go to getcopperhead.com. That's getcopperhead.com for your 2 free gifts with purchase. Getcopperhead.com.
Message and data rates may apply. See terms for details.
All right, taking your calls, 902-405-6000. That is the way to get a hold of us. Again, 902-405-6000. Perhaps you might want to react or respond to some things that Steve and I touched upon there during the last half hour. A great conversation. Always love our chats with Steve. Or perhaps something else that you've got in your mind. Whatever it is, give us a call at 902-405-6000. Some of the things that kind of caught my eye this morning. Look, folks, this story, and I talked about it with Steve. Nova Scotia Power says it will offer 5 years of free credit monitoring to all current and former customers following a ransomware attack that may have exposed sensitive personal information. The utility says an investigation has confirmed the data belonging to former customers was also taken by an unauthorized third party on or around March 19th. That is in addition to the previously reported breach affecting current customers. So I guess... Look, these things tend to fall out of the news cycle, and that's the nature of it. And obviously, for good reason, because things replace it, and you can't talk about the same thing over and over and over, and that's all well and good. But that said, folks, how concerned are you about this? And are you monitoring your credit? Have you signed up for this service? And are you checking your bank account on a daily basis? How has this changed, I guess, your life? How vigilant are you, and will you remain in looking at your personal information, or concerned about it being compromised? We can't live our lives in fear all the time and constantly being on guard. I get that, but again, this speaks to the position that we've been left by this utility, Nova Scotia Power. So what's your response on what's your take on the response from Nova Scotia Power on this? Do you think that it's been adequate or not? And I would dare say that probably most of you think that it has not been adequate. And the recent increase of credit monitoring to 5 years, and look, this is only because of public pressure. I'm sure of that. So I guess that's the first thing that caught my eye. What's your take on that? This story. Also, a Nova Scotia woman on income assistance who succeeded in forcing the province to pay for her air conditioner says she's frustrated other low-income people won't get the same relief. The 44-year-old woman from New Glasgow last October won an appeal to receive provincial funding for an air conditioner because of health conditions. She argued successfully that without the small unit she purchased last summer, heat would cause her chronic pains to intensify. Progressive Conservative leader and the Premier Tim Houston, whose party won the November 26 election, of course, had said while campaigning he would look into adding air conditioners to a list of special needs covered by the Social Assistance Program, but a spokesperson for the Department of Social Development said on Tuesday that the government was not planning to change this policy. And anybody, folks, who was outside yesterday or the day before, and particularly yesterday, can attest to how stifling it was, or if you're inside. And when I walked out of the building yesterday, which is air conditioned here, I was grateful that I have an air conditioner in my home, because it was stifling. And I thought to myself, what would it be like to be in an apartment building without air conditioning? And a lot of the buildings in Halifax aren't equipped with air conditioning. And can you imagine being on the 14th, 15th floor of one of those units and what that would be like? And if you had health issues? So I guess, is it legitimate here that again, is air conditioning a luxury or is it a necessity? And should the government be supplying air conditioners or helping people get air conditioners on income assistance? if they qualify for it. Is that something that you think is a luxury, or is it a necessity at this time? 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000. That is the way to reach us. Again, 902-405-6000. This story also, and then I'll go to the phones. The Nova Scotia government says only 60 tenants signed leases with landlords through a program that cost taxpayers $1.35 million over 2 years. The government first announced the program in August of 2023 to help people find affordable housing. It partnered with a nonprofit organization called Happy Pad that operates an online home sharing platform. Now, I don't want to get into any more details other than that, but I think that's enough to set the question up. Is this another example, the latest example of government wasteful spending with unfortunately a lack of accountability? And will this ever change? We continue to talk about these things on and on this show, and I'm not alone. Obviously, these hand-wringing over taxpayer waste is something that happens every day right across this country, and rightfully so. But in the end, what changes? What changes, folks? Is it realistic to think that we're doing anything other than just complaining, or does this perhaps lead to change? And I would suggest that regardless of political stripe, regardless of party, regardless of the background of the politicians in charge, this type of waste just continues and continues. What's your take on that? 902-405-6000 or anything else you got in your mind? Again, 902-405-6000. Let's kick it off with David. Hello, David.
Hi, Todd. There's a lot of talk about wage subsidies for immigrants and sort of new Canadians a couple days ago, and I just wanted to touch on that. From what I've sort of been finding out, most of it appears to be false. There's a video going around from the Make Canada Great Again YouTube channel that seems to be responsible for a lot of this, but also sort of typifies the arguments and the sort of justifications that people say these subsidies are happening. So anyway, in this video, the host shows a list of programs and that purportedly are subsidizing immigrants and new Canadians over regular Canadians. These are real programs, but they don't actually do what the host claims that they do. Pretty much most require that you actually be a Canadian citizen as part of the eligibility criteria. Most of them are also job creation grants. So for new jobs, so sort of by definition, they can't be taking a job away from anyone else. So as an example, Jobs Newfoundland is one of the programs that they described as the most egregious. So here's the requirements for that program. You have to be a Newfoundland resident. You have to be a Canadian citizen. You have to be unemployed, underemployed, or a recent postgraduate student. It does allow temporary residents to apply for that program if they're what's called international graduates with a postgraduate work permit. So basically what that means, if you graduated from a from a Canadian college or university, and you applied for a work permit to stay in the country, then you're able to access this job creation grant. And I think the sort of reasoning behind that is that, when people from other countries graduate universities here, it'd be better for us if they actually stayed here and applied those skills to, the benefit of us. So, there is one in Quebec that's funded by the provincial government. It does provide a 60% wage subsidy for new Canadians up to $5,000. But the requirement is that it has to be your first job ever in Canada. You can't have worked ever in this country before. And basically what it is just meant to sort of, help you get your foot into the labor force, learn the ropes and all that kind of stuff. So as far as Nova Scotia goes and the claims, there's only one wage subsidy program offered in the province, and that's through iSANS. And that's basically for new Canadians, recent immigrants, I think within the last 5 years, who are on income assistance. And sort of the idea is to get them into employment. That program is also available to Canadians as well, too, through the Department of Community Services. It's just that they deliver a stream of that program through iSANS, tailored to immigrants, obviously dealing with language barriers, unfamiliarity with the system and something like that. So, and I'm pretty sure that the reason behind that is if you can get somebody off income assistance and into employment, you're going to save a lot of money in the long run through, your reduced social assistance payments and stuff like that. So, like I say, it's just from at least what was presented in that video, pretty much all the claims made in it were false. So, it doesn't really seem to be that there's a lot of that going on.
Okay, David, appreciate the call.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right, take care. 902-405-6000. John's the first time caller. Hello, John.
Hey, how's it going?
We're going well. You?
Not too bad and everything. I just want to talk about the Nova Scotia Power thing that they had going on. I was on the list. I received my letter and stuff, so I signed up for the security thing. And then probably 3 weeks after, I was going through my credit card statement, and I had 2 charges there on my credit card. It wasn't for much. It was like $30 and $13 and change to a software company to purchase some items and stuff, and definitely wasn't me. So I called my credit card company, and they're reversing the charges and stuff since I disputed it and stuff, and it wasn't me, but it did not show up on my credit monitoring.
Interesting.
Everything is to be false. Everything. So I don't know how accurate the credit monitoring is from Nova Scotia Power.
Well, I think credit monitoring you'll only be notified if somebody opens up some new credit in your name.
Yeah.
Where if somebody uses your existing credit card, you wouldn't. It'd be like you using your credit card, and they would assume that it's just that wouldn't be a red flag, right?
Right. But like it was still somebody out there was able to get a hold of my credit card and stuff. So whether it is through the Nova Scotia Power thing or not, but even though my charges were reversed and stuff, I would still think they would be able to put that up through my credit monitoring. Everything as, my credit card company put it up there to say that.
John, is there a reason Nova Scotia Power would have your credit card number? Did you use it for billing?
Well, no, I don't use it for billing and stuff. Mine's just direct withdrawal, but it's still like what information was taken, from my account. Is it just my banking information? Is it cards that are attached to my bank account and stuff like that? Or, nobody really knows how much they got a hold of. They just say that your personal information was stolen.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess what I'm getting at is that to my knowledge, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong, when I use my credit card, Equifax is not going to notify me because I use my credit card. Now, if I opened up if I applied for a credit card, then Equifax would probably contact me, I would think, or notify me that somebody, in this case it would be me, so it would be okay. But if somebody tries to open up credit in your name, including yourself, then you'd be notified, to my knowledge.
Yeah, you could be right. I'm not 100% sure on it and everything, but I just wanted to put it out there that, like, my information, whether it was or wasn't taken by whoever got a hold of it and stuff, it just seemed conveniently odd that, I had false purchases on my credit card that, as soon as this happens to Nova Scotia Power, right?
Yeah, and they were small amounts, you said? Just small dollar amounts?
Yeah, they weren't huge amounts. It was like $13 and $30 and stuff to some software company, and I'm not exactly a IT guy by any means.
Yeah.
So I just thought it was strange.
Yeah, that's concerning.
So I don't know how much information they got a hold of. So.
Okay, John, appreciate the call, pal.
All right, thanks.
All right, take care. 902-405-6000. We'll continue with your calls when we come back. All right, continuing with your calls, 902-405-6000. Jerry's giving us a call. Hello, Jerry.
Hi, Todd. How are you today?
I'm well, you?
Great. I just like to make a comment with regards to the lady with the condition that needs the air conditioner. If it is a medical condition, I'm not sure how it works, but why would the individual go through her insurance and the doctor and try to get it that way rather than the taxpayers keep paying for these, everybody's little thing that comes out.
Jerry, you're hard to hear. You're kind of in and out there, but I think you asked why would insurance not cover the insurance, or rather the air conditioning unit? Is that what your question is?
Yeah, if it's a medical condition.
Well, I can't answer that other than this woman was on social assistance. So she wouldn't have any other options other than the province.
Okay, then. I guess I just thought I'd think outside the box here and make a comment. Thank you so much.
Okay, all right. Take care. 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us. Robert, hello. Hi, Robert.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm well. You?
Not too bad. Yeah, I was just calling. I agree with you on the air conditioning thing. I think the government should, with people that qualify, should definitely, there's a lot of people that I know that do not have air conditioning or heat pumps or anything. And, the last 2 days, it's just been brutal. Especially the fact that the way cost of living and everything is going, I think there should be a rebate or something or whatever. But I agree with you on that point. So, yeah, I just want to say, yeah, thumbs up to that. I agree with you on that. Something should be done about it.
Okay, Robert, appreciate the call. Take care. 902-405-6000. Joe, hello.
Hey, Todd.
Hi there.
Hi. I was calling about the air conditioning thing, too, but your last couple callers kind of made me feel stupid. But
how so? What do you mean made you feel? Well, how did they make you feel stupid?
Because they're talking about more important stuff than air conditioning. But it is important, I guess. It's just love Steve. You guys chat, and it's wicked. But I think it should be up to, when it comes to air conditioning, I think it should be the property. If you're talking about 15 floors, you're talking about somebody who's got a lot of money, and it should be up to them to install them. That's basically all I have to say.
So you're saying the building should be responsible, but retrofitting
These guys are millionaires.
Well,
They're millionaires.
Well, I know that, but retrofitting air conditioners throughout entire buildings would be the cost would be astronomical, would it not?
Okay, so what's that to their pocketbook? It's nothing. It really isn't. These guys are seriously rich. The developers.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've built apartment buildings. I've met they're not hurting for nothing, and they should be responsible for it. They should be. I mean, your last caller was talking about it's Nova Scotia, so we don't get that hot, but when you're acclimatized to it, it's hot. So it should be up to the owners to provide those. Todd, you were saying when you walked in, you were like, I appreciate the fact that that you have air conditioning in your building. I don't know. I'm just, the owners should be of the building. I mean, what they collect for rent, it should be up to them. It should be up to them. And
okay, Joe. All right. Appreciate the call.
Yeah. All right.
All right.
Thanks
Take
very
care.
much, Todd.
You got it. 902-405-6000. David. David, hello.
Good day, Todd. I did a stupid thing yesterday, and I went out in all that heat to deposit my recyclables. And I am so glad that I came back home and I thought about it. Because I used to live up at one of the apartments up in Medcap, and I tried to apply for an air conditioning, and I had to get that on my own. So now that I'm here in my new apartment, I really don't have to worry about it right now because my window faces the park on Wilmore Road in Dartmouth.
Yeah.
And I must be in a wind tunnel or something, so I really don't need one. But I did try to get the floor model type, not the one that goes in the window.
Yeah.
And they said you had to get that on your own.
Yeah. Are you on social assistance, David?
Yes, I am.
All right. And so you asked, and they said no. You have to pay for it on your own.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Okay, so anybody out there, good luck if you can get one.
Okay, pal. Take care. 902-405-6000. That again, the woman who applied for one and fought it and won, as I mentioned, from New Glasgow, 44-year-old woman, is on social income assistance, and she said that she needed it because of her chronic pain, and won the case. But this week, a spokesperson for the Department of Social Development said that the government was not planning to change this policy and to provide air conditioners for people on income assistance. So that's one of the questions that I'm asking you to weigh in on. Is air conditioning something that is now a necessity, or should it be considered a necessity, in particular for people with health issues? And if so, should it be paid for by the government? 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us. Again, 902-405-6000. We'll continue with your calls when we come back.
Hi, I'm Richard Karn, and you may have seen me on TV talking about the world's #1 expandable garden hose. Well, the brand new Pocket Hose Copperhead with Pocket Pivot is here, and it's a total game changer. Old-fashioned hoses get kinks and creases at the spigot, but the Copperhead's Pocket Pivot swivels 360 degrees for full water flow and freedom to water with ease all around your home. When you're all done, this rust-proof anti-burst hose shrinks back down to pocket size for effortless handling and tidy storage. Plus, your super light and ultra-durable Pocket Hose Copperhead is backed with a 10-year warranty. What could be better than that? I'll tell you what, an exciting exclusive offer just for you.
For a limited time, you can get a free Pocket Pivot and their 10-pattern sprayer with the purchase of any size Copperhead hose. Just go to getcopperhead.com. That's getcopperhead.com for your 2 free gifts with purchase. Getcopperhead.com.
Message and data rates may apply. See terms for details.
All right, taking your calls, 902-405-6000. Email from Joseph, and then we'll go back to the phones. Joseph says, I live in a new building in Dartmouth, a 15-story building. I'm on the 13th floor. A heat pump was included with each apartment. The heat pump provides both heating and cooling. The last couple of days, I was very thankful and grateful to have a heat pump. Many new buildings are including them. And that's true, but again, many buildings are still out there that are old stock, that do not have AC. The building that I moved into in Clayton Park, when I moved to Halifax, I've since moved out and purchased a home a number of years ago now, but did not have AC. And I was on the top floor, I think it was the 15th floor. And it was, my, oh my, when the humidity was high, it was just unbelievable how hot it was. So to retrofit air conditioners into those, or even heat pumps, would be, I suppose a heat pump wouldn't be that much of a retrofit, because you could put the outside component to it on the deck, I suppose. But anyway, nonetheless, immense costs associated with this. And floor units would be another option. I have a floor unit at my home now that cools my bedroom, which is great. But the reason why I'm talking about this is because a Nova Scotia woman on income assistance who succeeded in forcing the province to pay for air conditioner says she's frustrated other low-income people won't get the same relief. So this is something that the Department of Social Development announced this week, that they were not planning a change to the policy. So that is one of the questions that I'm asking you. Should the government help people with air conditioning units, in particular on income assistance, and in particular people who have health issues? Is it now a necessity? And of course, Nova Scotia Power, and a lot of people still talking about Nova Scotia Power, with that back in the news this week, with credit monitoring being extended. The utility told us this week by up to 5 years now, from 2 years. TransUnion, they're providing that through that service. And what are your thoughts on that? And are you remaining vigilant? Are you concerned about Nova Scotia Power and its data breach? And what are you doing to protect yourself? 902-405-6000. That is the way to reach us. Let's go back to the phones. Talk to Angie. Hello, Angie.
Hello. How are you?
I'm well. You?
Good. Couple things. Just on the Nova Scotia lady that got the air conditioning, one thing that people I think are missing, she had a health condition that was supported by medical diagnosis to support her health condition. So it's not a matter of just being on low income assistance that would make you qualify for an air conditioner.
Yeah, I mentioned that she had a health condition. I mentioned that.
Yeah, it's just some of the callers seem to think it's just carte blanche. Anybody on low income should get an air conditioning unit. That's not her case at all.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Right? The other thing is with Nova Scotia Power, they may have extended it to 5 years, but they're only going through TransUnion, which TransUnion and Equifax are two different companies, so they don't speak to each other. Each has their specialties that they track for identity theft, right, and credit application. But you would never know if True Identity, which is through TransUnion, doesn't cover the application that's being made against your identity. You would never know.
Yeah, that's true. That's a fact.
So it's a fact, and you know, I think the breach is a big one, and I think if they're extending it to 5 years, but they're only going through TransUnion, well, what if your identity is being used for something that Equifax manages and covers? You would never know. I think they should be offering it through both agencies that are available in Canada, so you're covered 100%.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And also, what happens at the end of the 5 years? I know people were saying that at the end of the 2 years, but that data in 5 years is still going to be valuable, and perhaps people will sit on it for 5 years and know that and they'll wait.
Well, the thing is, right now, the theft occurred, they say, March 19th. They could go back to that, but it doesn't. You're right. It doesn't mean that the person that got the identity is going to use it right away. They're going to wait for things to settle down.
Yeah, if you were smart, you would, right?
Absolutely. So I just think Nova Scotia Power was a little bit lax at first. They didn't really want to come out. Now, with any type of ransomware issue, they know the companies don't want to come out because they're hoping that they'll be able to negotiate with whoever did this and that things will be better. But that's not how it works. And I just think they're falling short by only sticking to one credit card monitoring company, and not credit card, but credit monitoring company. Because there's a whole other side. There's the other half of the credit monitoring company, which is Equifax. And TransUnion and Equifax don't talk. They're competitors.
That's right. Yeah. Well, I agree, Angie. Thanks for calling.
Thank you.
All right, take care. 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us. Hi, Bill.
Hi, Todd. A few little quick ones there. First of all, I'm surprised there are very few ladies calling in. It's mostly men, male population. That's number one. Number two, the air conditioning thing. You know, you can get a little rig here to put in your window and pick them up pretty reasonable. I mean, like under $100 out of the season, which can do quite a bit there for one room anyway, for that particular room. The other thing is light and power. I don't know why it can't be done or what, but this strong monopoly they have. I don't know why the province can't take this over and work it out with them. I can't believe they've been allowed to go this long. Now, the other thing, the last thing I wanted to say is all this credit information that they want or look for when they sign you up for to give you power, I think maybe not even have it's needed. I mean, the point of it is this is very simple. They control the power coming to your property. If you don't pay the bill, who cares what the credit card says or whatever else? If you don't pay the bill, very simple, you just get cut off. When you say that's a simple thing,
well,
you don't pay the bill, what do you need all the credit stuff?
I understand that, but there is expense to that, right? So I get that. Look, I think that they should have some look into people's pay. I understand what you're saying, Bill, but I guess what I'm getting, what I would counter to that is that if Nova Scotia Power signs somebody up and they're constantly chasing them for money, and they have to shut them off, then they have to reinstall. I mean that's a pain in the butt for the company, and there's a cost associated with that. So it's not just as simple as that, I would say, Bill.
I don't think it's that much of a cost to simply shut down the service if you're not paying your bill.
Well, they got to send somebody. They have to send somebody there to do it, and the administrative burden of billing somebody and chasing it. Look, I'm not saying that it disqualifies or discounts completely what you're saying, but all I'm adding is that there is an expense to delinquent customers for Nova Scotia Power. There is an expense to that.
But not enough to have everybody that comes after power go through all this credit information and giving it up to. I think the few that they got to come and shut down certainly offsets taking everybody's credit information and is subject to being stolen.
Yeah.
So that's my take.
Okay.
You're doing
Bill.
a fantastic job, by the way.
Okay, pal. Appreciate it. Thanks, bud.
Right.
Take care. 902-405-6000. Dave, hello.
Yes. Good morning, Todd. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
As far as the air conditioning for those that are on social assistance or whatever, and I don't want to be mean here, but it does open up a can of worms. I suppose if you have a chronic ailment, you could call arthritis as a chronic ailment. I think we all suffer when it's humid and wet, and that is a chronic ailment. So I think the expense of air conditioning, especially a heat pump, and also the electricity that it runs off of, is very expensive. And when we say government, we know who the government is, right? That's a taxpayer. So it would be the taxpayers that are going to fork out. I guess I'm so mum to so many things going out government-wise. I just, what the heck, right? But I just would raise that point. And there would also be probably middle income who work hard, come back to their homes, and can't afford air conditioning. So, where do you draw that line? Are we getting hotter, Todd? You've been in this part of the world for a long time, New Brunswick, I believe, as well.
Yeah.
Is the climate changing, or are we just getting a little bit more soft? I know we do get some humid weather. I moved here from out west, and we never got humidity out there. You slog through it, and you can get floor models, which I did purchase, like yourself, I think, and I think they're about $600. But if you go a heat pump, it can get into the thousands very quickly, because you don't need ducting necessarily, but there's quite a lot that goes into it. Again, I don't want to be mean or whatever, but when it comes to who's chronic and who would be entitled to this is, like I said, opening up a can of worms. But can I just talk quickly about the Middle East?
Okay.
To me, it's been very fascinating. I'm not a warmonger, but I did know that, or didn't know, but I anybody that thought the U.S. wasn't going to go in there and use their specific bunker busters would have been, not to think that they would have been capable of taking out the nuclear sites there. And I have to think, from what I've seen, and again, you're just versed on whatever site you go on, and listening to the president and the defense secretary and what have you, it looks like they did a number on that. They didn't just use the bunker buster missiles from the B-2s, and they also used from the submarine, the nuclear submarine that was in the area, or submarines. Wouldn't specifically say Tomahawk missiles that also hit some sites prior that didn't finish the job there, perhaps. And again, I'm not a warmonger, but the regime there is very radical, and I'm saying the regime because it's not the Iranian people themselves, I don't believe. And I think if they weren't allowing inspectors into that site for days or years or 60 days to allow somebody to go in, we just want to have a look. What are you doing? What are you cooking up here? And they didn't want that, and they delayed. I think we'd be foolish to think they're not up to something sinister. You have a country that is fossil fuel rich. They can export 2 million barrels a day refined oil. So if you can't fuel your country, the gift of oil, like we are with Alberta, smaller country, I think, Iran, a little hilly and demanding as far as getting pipelines through, but to want a nuclear site, that 4 nuclear sites, as a matter of fact, no, I think the world can rest a little easier. And what might have been left, there's a lot of damage there. I can't see it up and running again. And again, I'm not a warmonger, but I am fascinated on the ability that the U.S. has to be able to perform something so clinical, if you will. And there's always going to be some carnage when it comes to dropping bombs, obviously. Todd, you're a military man. Maybe your thoughts, and you're a military man, not now, but I think it's always in your blood, is it not?
Yeah.
You'll always be considered a military man. You, as a journalist, must be watching this or have seen this. I was in a specific place at the time, and I was actually away, and I actually told my sons, because he's in the military, and we all got on the phone pretty quick, and it was like, texting or whatever. It's like, holy crap, is this going down?
Yeah.
And the success of the rate of it, and again, I'm not. And another thing that spun off of this, shortly after Trump and his team were at The Hague with NATO.
Yeah.
And did you see that they bolstered all their spending up to about 5%, including Carney, who I think is going to spend $150 billion very quick.
Well, it's not very quick. That's I think I think it's 2029 or something like that. As to I'm not sure what the timeline is, but Dave, my instinct is that 5% is something that they'll agree to now as years down the road, and probably we'll never see that. My instinct is that I don't think we'll ever get to that. I think it'll be a stretch to get to 3.5%, and that's where the U.S. is right now, is 3.5%, and Canada's committed to it, and I think that it's probably the right move to commit to that. Whether or not that happens or not down the road, a lot of water under the bridge between now and then, Dave.
Well, I think he's committed 20% raise to the military, and that's going to be quite expensive, and I don't disagree with that at all, to be honest with you. I can spend my tax money in worse ways. And by the way, recruiting is up down in the States right now after the parade and after what people are seeing. And I'm not a warmonger, but the recruitment is being very, very active. Young people are probably saying, hey, you know what? We can make a good lifestyle in the military. And, I think it's been fascinating times. And let's hope it all comes to a peace treaty here. And they settle. They got the ceasefire going. Power through strength. I mean, sadly, the world is unshaking. I mean, look at Putin. Look what the devastation that he's caused. He's a tyrant. There's tyrants everywhere. And you could say the regime in Iran is a tyrant. And I'm not a religious person. I don't know the man, but they've always been up to no good supporting, the proxies of Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Houthis. So, there you go. They're terrorist organizations, and they've been obliterated, or they've been hitting targets throughout the years. You can go back in Obama's. It's been on and on and on. So
okay, Dave.
Hopefully Iran will get some footing and move forward with their life and prosper. I really do hope for the Iranians.
All right, thanks for the call, pal. Take care. 902-405-6000. We'll continue with your calls when we come back.
Hi, I'm Richard Karn, and you may have seen me on TV talking about the world's #1 expandable garden hose. Well, the brand new Pocket Hose Copperhead with Pocket Pivot is here, and it's a total game changer. Old-fashioned hoses get kinks and creases at the spigot, but the Copperhead's Pocket Pivot swivels 360 degrees for full water flow and freedom to water with ease all around your home. When you're all done, this rust-proof anti-burst hose shrinks back down to pocket size for effortless handling and tidy storage. Plus, your super light and ultra-durable Pocket Hose Copperhead is backed with a 10-year warranty. What could be better than that? I'll tell you what, an exciting exclusive offer just for you.
For a limited time, you can get a free pocket pivot and their 10-pattern sprayer with the purchase of any size Copperhead hose. Just go to getcopperhead.com. That's getcopperhead.com for your 2 free gifts with purchase. Getcopperhead.com.
Message and data rates may apply. See terms for details.
All right, continuing with your calls to the top of the hour. A reminder, we've got Dr. Jeff Goodall, veterinarian who runs the Sunnyview Animal Care Center, and our Ask the Vet segment from noon until 1 today. So if you have a pet-related question or concern, it's a good opportunity for you to get some advice from the vet. As mentioned, we're taking your general calls between now and the top of the hour, 902-405-6000. Jeff, hello.
Hi, Todd. How are you?
I'm well, you?
Very well, thank you. Yeah, that's a good program with the doc there. They had the fire ban. You check after 2 every day, okay?
Yeah.
Tuesday, there was no ban. It was 100 and some degrees. And I was in Stewiacke that day. And then last night I was in Stewiacke. Well, still here.
Yeah.
There was only, it was about 40-kilometer-an-hour winds. And again, 100 degrees. I just wonder why there was no fire bans on them 2 days. Excuse me.
I wasn't aware of that. I didn't know.
Yeah, because I was going to do some marshmallows, right, and stuff, right? And I said, okay. It should be the other night, we were going to do them, and there was a fire ban on, and it wasn't as bad as the last 2 days. And then Wednesday, and then yesterday, high wind, no fire ban. Oh, sorry, there was counties. But Tuesday, none. It was wide open. I just thought that interesting.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I wasn't aware of that, Jeff. I don't really pay attention to it because I'm not out burning, so.
Yeah, I'm at a camp, so we had the odd fire, right, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I was really shocked, Todd, Tuesday and Wednesday, none at all. Yeah, I just thought I'd bring that up.
Okay, Jeff, appreciate the call. Take care. 902-405-6000. Kevin, hello.
Hi, Todd.
Hi
I
there.
just want to talk about the Nova Scotia Power credit situation.
Sure.
It's good to see them go to 5 years, and they keep touting it as being a free program, so I think they would have great difficulty in trying to recover the costs down the road through the ratepayers. I'm sure that would be a legal issue if they were constantly saying it was free and then wanted to pay for it down the road. But on the heat pump issue, Nova Scotia Power used to finance them. And when Houston took power, that program was canceled for some reason. I'm not sure why. But probably the company with the most vested interest in heat pumps would be Nova Scotia Power. And you think that they would be willing to give everybody a free heat pump just based on the ability to recover from you on a monthly basis the energy costs that they would use. So it's hard to ask the government to give you a free heat pump or provide you a heat pump when another company is going to profit from that. But those are just my thoughts on the two matters.
Yeah, well, I know that in St. John Energy, which is not a subsidiary, it's NB Power. It's a Crown corporation owned by the municipality, but they allowed you to lease heat pumps through St. John Energy. I don't know if NB Power does the same thing. But that program is still around, and I think it's interesting. You said that Nova Scotia Power used to offer the same things.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And they don't now.
And as soon as Tim Houston's government got in the first time, within a month, Nova Scotia Power ended that program.
Well, I wonder. I don't know that the provincial government would have any say over that, but perhaps it would. I don't know that, but that's interesting.
Yeah. Anyway, thanks, Todd.
Okay, Kevin, take the call. Thanks for the call. Appreciate the calls, everybody. Good calls, good comments. We'll open the phone lines again tomorrow between 11 and 12. And thanks, everybody, for picking up the phone and making the call. It is appreciated. And speaking of picking up the phone and making a call, we've got our Ask the Vet segment. Dr. Jeff Goodall is a veterinarian who runs the Sunnyview Animal Care Center in Bedford. And by tradition, it has become tradition on the show the last Thursday of the month, which we invite the doctor on, the vet on, to take your questions and answer your concerns about your pet. So if you have a pet-related question, health or behavioral related, now's a great opportunity to get some advice from the vet. Give us a call at 902-405-6000. That is the way to reach us for our Ask the Vet segment. Again, 902-405-6000. Dr. Jeff Goodall, Ask the Vet when we come back. All right, it's our Ask the Vet segment. Dr. Jeff Goodall, veterinarian, runs the Sunnyview Animal Care Center in Bedford, joins us to take your pet-related questions or concerns. The way to reach us is 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000 if you'd like to talk to the vet about your pet. Jeff, hello.
Hey, Todd. I hope you're having a great day, and hi to Vanessa as well.
Not bad at all. How about yourself?
You know, not bad. I'm off for the morning here doing some other stuff, and I'm glad to be able to contribute to pet care for your listening audience.
Great stuff. 902-405-6000. That's the way to get a hold of us. We got a call already. Maggie, hello.
Hi. Good morning.
Hi there.
Hi. I have a little Yorkie poo. She's 4 years old, and she has IBS. And the only food she can generally eat is chicken, which I bake for her, and turkey. We need to stay away from the dark meats. I'm concerned about that she's getting enough nutrition through her food. We do have some special dry food that I get from the veterinarian, but her consumption of vegetables and stuff is very limited, one, because she's so fussy. But I'm just concerned about her nutrition.
Well, so you're feeding a veterinary food to support the inflammatory bowel disease condition?
Yeah, she's getting veterinary food, but I also bake for her. Yeah, and I just want to get the right nutrition. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, it's a difficult question for me to answer until I see the pet, and I'm not saying you have to come to us. But in the end, is your dog on any medication, or is it just completely diet managed?
No, she's on something like metronidazole or something like that.
Metronidazole, yeah. Okay, and anything
amazing.
else?
Yeah. No.
Sorry.
No.
Okay. So metronidazole for the listening audience is pretty common, as is prednisone. Look, if she's on a veterinary diet, it's balanced. I know a lot of people don't like kibble, but most of the I wouldn't say all, most of the veterinary foods are actually fed to pets. I'll do a YouTube short on that soon on AFCO profiles, but most dog foods are actually, and cat foods are actually never fed to pets, never tested on a live animal. Most veterinary foods are. So right off the bat, I'm going to say it's probably perfectly balanced for your dog. The problem with inflammatory bowel disease is the animal's not typically able to absorb everything we would like. If you're worried about the diet, it sounds like you are, something to think about, and I don't have the ISBN number for the book, but Hillary Watson, she's a veterinary nutritionist, and they're pretty rare, like hen's teeth. She wrote a book, I think it's called Complete and Balanced, and it's a homemade recipe book, and there are recipes in there for animals, dogs and cats with, it's mostly dogs, inflammatory bowel disease. So if you're worried about maybe augmenting the kibble, I would let your veterinarian know you've heard about this book, Complete and Balanced by Hillary Watson, DVM. It's available on Amazon. And then you have to buy her balancing powder because it's a mineral vitamin powder that balances out the homemade diet, and go from there. But I would still let your veterinarian know that's what you're choosing to do, and he or she can help you decide what the mean energy requirement is per day for your pet and go from there.
Okay. Thank you very much for your help.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
It helps.
902-405-6000. Donna, hello.
Hi, how are you today?
Doing well.
Yeah, so I have a golden retriever, and I've had him to the vet. He seems to have a problem with especially one of his ears, the right one. And they said that he didn't have an ear infection or whatever, and I do clean it out regularly, and I put in a solution that I got from the vet that apparently is supposed to, like, dry up the inside or whatever. But every time I take him swimming, like the next day or something, he's scratching at his ear, and it, like, this morning I noticed that it smells kind of stinky.
Okay. Well, again, here's a tough one again. Basically, your dog has allergies, and your veterinarian must have broached that with you by now, I would think.
Okay. No, she never said anything about that. No.
Well, look, it's very blasé. It's almost flippant for me to say that, so I should be more careful. Basically, that state of overreactivity or hypersensitivity in dogs is typically, it's not always, but typically it's seen by these chronic unilateral or one-sided ear, I'll say irritations, because as you know, the dog's ear is not infected, it's affected, and they're two different things. And so the most common symptom with allergies is itchy skin. The second most common is unilateral ear irritations. And you may want to have a discussion with your vet. So what you're using is a drying solution, it sounds like, and like our Burrow solution or something like that, and then a good ear cleaner. And that's all you can do for now. How old's your dog? Tell me it's not young.
He's going to be a year in August.
Yep, I knew it. So basically his immune system's developing. So there's a reasonable chance he'll develop his way out of this.
Okay.
But I love golden retrievers. I'm thinking about getting one after my dog recently passed myself. But he may grow out of it. He also may grow into more sensitivities. And so you may want to talk to your vet about probably an email to start, but, you know, maybe a different ear cleaner, maybe a low-grade hydrocortisone drop might be useful. Using chronic antibiotics is just going to make things worse. But there are options, but you may want to also talk to your vet about, I don't want to pigeonhole your pet, no vet wants to, but the common allergies are, guess what? Exposure to water, damp skin, so hose your dog off after swimming. Don't let them drink the water if you can possibly avoid it. Common allergens are the pollens, the mold, the dust mites, what have you. So trying to, for the listening audience, a lot of clients of our clinic flip foods. They keep thinking, well, it's a food allergy. It's a food allergy. And when I first graduated, it wasn't that uncommon. But that's 35 years ago. Things have changed. So please, for the listening audience, don't start flipping diets around. It's worth an email to your veterinarian if your dog is having one-sided ear, I'll call it irritations, and go from there, okay? I hope that helps, but your dog is probably developing a hypersensitivity to something.
Okay, because I have his brother from a different litter, and he had sensitivities to chicken and grain. So both of them are on a chicken-free and grain-free diet. So
yeah, but
I don't
again,
think
I'm going to submit with respect that food isn't that useful in most cases.
Okay. All right. So I guess I better take him back and just see what she says
Drop
about
an email
that.
first. You know, veterinary care is expensive and your time's important too. Drop an email first. Maybe your vet can intuit something from the start. And then probably they will want to see you. There's no doubt about it. But you don't necessarily have to run down for that right away. Start with an email and take it from there.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks. Take care. 902-405-6000. Diana, hello.
Hi, how are you guys today?
We're well.
Good. I just had a very weird question. With all the ticks we're having this year, we're finding a lot on ourselves. My dog is protected with Simparica Trio, so I never really have a problem. We're finding them on us. My question is, and you may not know the answer to this, and I don't know if your actual doctor would, why haven't we come up with a medication that humans could take? Is it just the weight factor? And if it is, I'm thinking about a St. Bernard. They would also be on this kind of medication.
To interrupt. Are you asking me about a human case, a human situation?
Yeah, I'm asking if they've ever come up with something for humans. Whether you can't. I didn't think you would. I wasn't sure if I should ask Dr. Gillis or you.
To ask Dr. Gillis, I really, doctors are, they're only dealing with one species all the time, and they know a lot about them. We deal with every species and except humans. So, sorry, can't help you. I'm not trying to be evasive. I just don't know.
No, okay, that's fair. I just know that you probably know a lot more about parasite control than they would, but I figured I'd give it a try.
There you go.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
All right, take
Have a
care.
great day, guys.
All right, 902-405-6000. Philip, hello.
How are you today?
We're well.
A question for the vet. I have a dog. He's 16 years old, and he's Jack Russell Dachshund mix. And over the last few weeks, when he's been stumbling when he's walking to his left, and he's falling down steps now. And when we take him out to the bathroom, he can't stand up much. We go to a vet the end of next week, but we're thinking it may be time to have to put him down because it's getting worse every day.
Okay, so let's not go that far. But if you're close to a veterinary, an alternative vet, you don't have to go to your own vet. A lot of vets are busy. We're certainly seeing clients that are members of other clinics for second opinions anyway. When you look at your dog's face, is one eye slightly closed more than the other?
I didn't really notice. He's got a little wart on his left side of his face now, and his barking's getting bad.
Okay, no. So how old's the dog? How old's the dog again?
16 years old.
Okay, so he probably has something. Is his head tilted at all?
A little bit.
Okay, so look up, Google, old dog vestibular disease. It's a really common ailment in elderly dogs.
Okay.
It is not something you have to put the dog down for. Just old dog, or just Google vestibular, which is VEST, VUBULAR, vestibular disease. Okay, and it can cause dogs to circle. It can cause dogs to be wobbly. It's a sudden onset. Typically doesn't progress horribly, but the vestibular system is the balance system. And so the dogs present with a sudden loss of balance, disorientation, head tilt, sometimes jerking eye movements. Sometimes you'll see one eye a little bit closed than the other. And it's self-limiting. So let's not jump down that path of euthanasia yet, though it's sadly something that might need to be considered. But there's no treatment. I want to be clear on this. A lot of vets, I'm not saying they're wrong, will throw steroids on board and all this to try and do something, but it could also be a middle ear infection. So that's a little more serious than old dog vestibular disease. But typically, and this is what bothers me, that what you're saying is, in my experience, the dogs typically go back to about 80% normal. After an episode of Old Dog Vestibular, they go back to 80% of normal within 2 to 3 weeks. And it doesn't sound like that's what's happening here. So, in other words, without treatment, your dog will rebound. Typically, if it's Old Dog Vestibular disease, they're going to rebound within 2 to 3 weeks with no treatment at all.
Okay, then. Thank you very much.
Hope it helps.
Okay.
All right. Take care. 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us for our Ask Vet segment with Dr. Jeff Goodall. We've got the doctor to 1 o'clock. If you have a health-related, pet-related question, health or behavioral, give us a call at 902-405-6000. Ask the Vet continues when we come back. Right, it's our Ask the Vet segment with Dr. Jeff Goodall, runs the Centerview Animal Care Center in Bedford. Jeff, you wanted to, before we go back to the phones, you wanted to pass along some advice concerning the weather and the heat, and so
I appreciate this opportunity, and I do have a YouTube. I'll send the link to Vanessa and on the recent chip bag thing. Look, as the temperature's going up, there's a risk to our pets, and so knowing pets don't sweat like humans do, heat stroke can occur, and it's a medical emergency. It can happen so fast. I just had a client come in the other day with their black lab and say, he just loves to sit out in the heat. I have to encourage him to get back in. I'm like, that's a danger. These black dogs, black cats, they're at real risk. So hydration's the key. Cool, fresh water at all times, no ice. Ice can put cats and dogs off drinking sometimes. So cool, fresh water, provide shade and shelter. Obviously, never leave your pet in a car. When you're walking your dog, make sure you walk first thing in the morning or very late at night. And I know it sounds silly, but I use the analogy, take your shoes off and walk on the sidewalk. If it's too hot for your feet, it's damn well too hot for your dog. Yeah. Pools, somebody mentioned they were swimming their dog in the earlier session. Make sure pool, ocean, river, you rinse your dog off after they're coming out of the water with cool hose water. That also just gets rid of blue-green algae and other toxins. Make sure your dog or cat are not drinking from the pool or the ocean. That's really dangerous. Again, that room temperature, warm water. Okay, what are the symptoms of heat stroke? Excessive panting, difficulty breathing. They become really restless. They cannot settle. They're anxious. Their gums get it's called brick red. They look like a brick on the side of a building. Fast pulse, fast heart rate. It can progress to collapse. What are you going to do? You're going to move them to a cool, shaded area immediately using cold hose water or cool hose water, not ice baths. Ice baths are going to put your dog or cat into shock. You're going to offer them small amounts of cool water to drink. You're going to get a rectal thermometer and take their temperature. If it's above 39.5 Celsius or 103, they're in trouble. And you got to start cooling them down. Get a friend on the phone to let your the closest veterinary clinic know, not your regular, go to your closest, because you got to transport immediately. Because the problem is the outside, we cool them down with the hose, but the inside's still cooking. And it sounds really disgusting to talk about it, but the organs cook. And the other thing, and the last thing, because I want to get back to the phones, if your dog or cat is brachiocephalic, snub nose, like pugs and boxers or Persian cats, really just protect them. Pets rely on us to do that. And some breeds and conditions like heart disease, respiratory disease, or their genetics with their face put them at risk. Senior pets, if in doubt, keep them inside. And there you go. And there's a YouTube on that, for a YouTube short for everybody.
Okay, great stuff. 902-405-6000. Paul, hello.
Hi, Todd. Hope you're well.
Yeah, not bad.
And I'd like to speak to the doctor, please.
Sure. You're talking to him.
Doctor, I've purchased a few months back a Scotty Straight kitten, and I just love her to death. She's 4.5 months now. She was just castrated or fixed. And my question is, her eyes seep a lot, and they get crusty. And I wondered, is this a lifetime thing for that cat? Happen to wipe its eyes? And sorry for interrupting.
No, it can be. I would I would drop an email to your vet and just make sure that there's a disease called dry eye, and it can be a little more common in some of those breeds, and it is treatable. It requires daily medication, drops, and what have you. But a lot of these breeds, so is it a stub-nosed breed as well?
Yes.
Yeah, and there you go.
The doctor put her on lysine. I take a half a scoop at each feeding twice a day.
Okay, so what this gentleman's talking about for the listening audience, lysine's an amino acid. It boosts immune systems in cats. It doesn't seem to do anything for dogs, and for the people who are listening for human input, doesn't seem to do anything for people either. But great idea. Your vet's really on top of things, but it's worth an email to him or her to say, hey, I've got seeping eyes. There are wipes that are pH balanced to help get rid of the smell, the bacterial infection that can occur from the seepage down the face. And they're safe around the eyes because not all wipes are. In fact, wipes are overdone, in my opinion. But we have clients wiping the eyes down, and it is probably from the genetics of the breeding that have led to the tear ducts not working properly. And you might read on the internet that you can get them flushed. Please don't. I've never seen a flush go well. And it is probably lifelong.
Well, she said when the cat was under the anesthetic to have them neutered that she may flush the ear ducts. Now, my landlord is a vet. He used to own Forepaws. And he said, Paul, whatever you do, don't let her flush the ear duct or the ear ducts. So,
that's what I just said
opinions. Too. Yes, that's what you said. So, okay, so can you
just
get
keep
the
them
wipes
clean
at the pharmacy?
and do your best, brother.
Yeah, can you get the wipes at the pharmacy?
Veterinary only, as far as I know now. They might be online. I don't know. I don't keep up.
Okay, take care, Doc. Thank you.
All right.
Great question.
All right.
Take care.
902-405-6000. That is the way to reach us for our Ask the Vet segment. We got Dr. Jeff Goodall for another half hour. Get some room for you as well. Again, 902-405-6000. Ask the Vet continues when we come back.
Hi, I'm Richard Karn, and you may have seen me on TV talking about the world's #1 expandable garden hose. Well, the brand new Pocket Hose Copperhead with Pocket Pivot is here, and it's a total game changer. Old-fashioned hoses get kinks and creases at the spigot, but the Copperhead's Pocket Pivot swivels 360 degrees for full water flow and freedom to water with ease all around your home. When you're all done, this rust-proof anti-burst hose shrinks back down to pocket size for effortless handling and tidy storage. Plus, your super light and ultra-durable Pocket Hose Copperhead is backed with a 10-year warranty. What could be better than that? I'll tell you what, an exciting exclusive offer just for you.
For a limited time, you can get a free pocket pivot and their 10-pattern sprayer with the purchase of any size Copperhead hose. Just go to getcopperhead.com. That's getcopperhead.com for your 2 free gifts with purchase. Getcopperhead.com.
Message and data rates may apply. See terms for details.
All right, it's our Ask the Vet segment with Dr. Jeff Goodall, veterinarian who runs the Sunnyview Animal Care Center in Bedford. If you'd like to chat with Dr. Jeff, give us a buzz at 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000. Joan, hello.
Hello, how are you?
Well, you?
Not bad. So my question is, I have a German Shepherd. He's 123 pounds. He's been trained, and he's well behaved mostly, but in the car, he's a different beast. So he barks at cyclists, anyone walking down the road, and I don't mean just barks. I mean he goes crazy, like lunging in the car. And
I understand.
So I was thinking about I'm doing some research, but I was thinking about getting one of those sound things put in the car, like a bark buster, or that just emits a sound to distract them, and then you would reward them for the good behavior. So I'm wondering, what do you think of that? Or is there some other thing that I can do?
Okay, so you just triggered something in my mind, so I'm just going to diverge for a sec. I mentioned about overheating animals outside. and this reminds me of it. There's a human study that just came out that says people on what are called SSRIs or serotonin uptake inhibitors like fluoxetine, and I can't remember the name of the other one. Those people are more prone to overheating and heat stroke. So if your dog or cat are on these medications and outside, let's keep that in mind, that those drugs can actually predispose to heat stroke. Okay, so look, sincerely, you need a behaviorist for this dog. He's not a bad dog. He's just equivalating or basically sensitive about being in that enclosed room that moves, that is really your car, and he's being protective of it. So we don't want to start giving negative reinforcement without guidance from a proper behavior professional. And those sound things they might be an option. All I know is that a lot of clients who have tried them in their homes are initially really impressed with them, but then over time they find that the dogs tolerate it. So, yeah, there are Composure Pro treats. There are natural anti-anxietals that you can. How old's this dog?
He's 3.
Right. So where I'm going is drop an email to your vet, get some recommendations for behaviorists. There's a veterinarian, I can't think of her name suddenly, I think it's Ashton in Elmsdale, who's both a veterinarian and a certified behavior trainer. You can get your vet to refer to her. We've had really good experiences with these kind of odd cases like your dog's. But if he's 3 years old, he's probably going to manifest other behaviors, is my point. So getting him on Composure Pro to reduce anxiety naturally, or Xylokine's another one that reduces anxiety generally. These are supplements you can have a chat with your vet, probably by email if your vet knows your dog. I don't know if you have to have a consult per se.
The vet does. The vet does know the dog, and they have.
Well, there you go.
Talked about anxiety with separation anxiety and such things, but he doesn't seem to respond well. He just seems dopey when he's on those.
I'm not talking medication. It just brought me up to the other thought. No, we're talking natural anti-anxietals, right? Not drugs. So I think it's worth another chat with your vet, because your dog is going to develop other problems. That's where I'm going. He'll develop other manifestations of this. The car is only the beginning.
No, 100%.
And so getting a behaviorist is the exact right thing to do.
He scans out the room, and that room is then become all of his to protect. So he does do that.
That's exactly what's happening.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Joe. Get a good behaviorist, you'll love him more.
Okay. I can't love him more. That's not possible. But thank you very, very much, and have a wonderful day.
Okay, take care. 902-405-6000. Lee, hello.
Hi, how are you doing today?
Doing well.
Good. Dr. Goodall, I just have a quick question for you. I have an 11-year-old cat, and she has recently been diagnosed with lymphatic, I think it's called a lymphatic cyst. So she has fluid building up on both sides of her neck, which is making it slightly difficult for her to breathe. The vet did thyroid tests, and she said her thyroid was normal. So we did a biopsy, and she said that unfortunately, there's nothing that can be done except for surgery and CT scans, and that was well into the $7,000 to $10,000 range when we started going to PEI and everything else. So at this point, we're just taking a palliative approach with her. What my question for you is, doesn't seem to be in pain. She's still eating, she's still drinking, she still enjoys playing with us. But how do we know when it's time to make? Sorry, this is still relatively new for me. How do we know when it's time to make that decision that it's time to put her down?
That's a very difficult question for me to answer without seeing the situation, to be honest. I mean, it really comes down to what you're basically asking about is when to euthanize a dog or a cat. For the entire listening audience, I'll have to kind of take it general because a lymphatic cyst is treatable, but yes, it might be expensive. You could also consider possibly talking to your vet about draining it if possible. But having said that, I can't answer that question very specifically. My own dog passed recently, and we knew it was time because her quality of life started to slide. She wasn't as excited. This is a cat, mind you, but in your case, but, she wasn't as excited to see us when we came home. She would try, but she would struggle to get up. Appetite went off. She didn't have any accidents in the home, but cats will typically start to do that. They'll become reclusive. They may not come out to be cuddled and petted by the people that they love, because remember, cats are a little selective there. Sadly, if this is a situation where the cyst keeps enlarging and can't be drained, and it is impeding on her airway, then her quality of life will become quite a challenge. Maybe there's an option at the Maritime Veterinary Referral or the Coastal Veterinary Referral Centers versus the vet college. They may not be less expensive, but possibly you could start a GoFundMe and see if there's a way to get the money together for what, yes, would probably be a very expensive surgery. So I'm doing this in generalities because I don't really know the cat. I can't really see it. But it comes down to, if you and your family are like, hey, our cat is not happy. He or she is not living a reasonable way of living, then sadly we need to make that decision. So I don't know if that's exactly what you want to hear, but that's how I guess I would handle it.
Yeah, I mean, we had talked to her about looking at draining it, but she said that the problem with draining it is that she keeps, if we keep making appointments to have it drained over and over again, it's going to cause an infection. So she's like, I don't want to, that's not an avenue that she said she felt comfortable going down. Because she did drain a little bit for the biopsy, and it filled right back up to the same level within a couple of days. So she's draining it.
Drainage may not.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, it's a discussion with your family. It's a discussion with open, honest communication with your veterinarian and their team and your family. I guess the question you're asking is, signs and symptoms. I would say it's the day-to-day activities that are disappearing, the day-to-day quality of life, and how you measure or evaluate that. And then I would start the conversation with your team as well, your veterinary team, by email about, hey, the day of this, if it's coming to that, what can I expect? Can I be with my pet or not? Some people choose to want to be, some people don't. Care of remains, euthanasia, pet burial at home, those those kind of things need to be decided. There are other ways to deal with grief. There's a great grief counselor at Carnegie Animal Hospital. She's a certified counselor in the profession. So there's a lot of options there to help you get through this, because I'm going through it. I'm still depressed. And it's 5 months later.
Yeah, I know. They're our family. So she's really, we've had 2 kids, but they're both grown up. So she's our new kid. So this was not something that was expected. She's the most loving cat you would ever meet. So anyways, thank you very much. I appreciate your input.
Okay, thanks. Thanks for the call. 902-405-6000. Kale, hello. Hi, Kale.
Hi there. Just calling about my dog who we're talking about a mixed breed Cape Breton Special from the SPCA. She's about 80 pounds. We were told Shepherd Mastiff mix. Anyway, she just turned 3. Otherwise, really healthy. Her favorite treat is usually an ice cube, which we pay the ice cube tax and we open the freezer. About a week and a half ago, she started, she'd chomp it down and she would almost immediately regurgitate it. I don't want to say vomit because it's very instantaneous. And usually what comes up is a couple pieces of still frozen ice cube and kind of almost like a thick mucusy type thing, which I assume is some, stuff from inside the stomach or esophagus with the ice cube. And that's how it started. It will also happen currently when if she's drinking, if she takes a lot of water kind of at one drink. Doesn't really happen if we kind of cut her off after 15 20 seconds of drinking water and make her take a break. Just wondering if this is something that we should be going to the vet immediately to get a chance, or how to handle it going forward.
Okay, well, it may not necessarily just be due to the ice cube, right? I have to say this, I don't want to say this, that the number one disease in shepherds when it comes to this kind of behavior, the number one disorder associated with regurgitation in my experience with shepherds is something called megaesophagus. And if my memory is right, regurgitation is the most common sign of it. And so basically what might be happening, because your dog is regurgitating on water and ice cubes, and it's in its earliest stages, water can pool in the esophagus and not get moved further down into the stomach. And basically there's no real heaving or gagging. They just blurp it all back up again. So I'm not saying it's an emergency. Megaesophagus is not if you will, it's a single disease. It's a sort of a syndrome. And I'm not saying that's what's happening here, but I'm saying it's something that you and your vet need to have a chat about. Siamese cats, for the listening audience, is my number one in Siamese cats for regurgitation. If it can, basically, I would avoid the ice cubes for now and slow your dog down like you are for drinking, and watch how he's eating and swallowing his food. And if this starts to become a titch more common, it's worth a consult with your veterinarian. It's probably worth an email now to say, hey, this is what I'm hearing, and I heard this crazy guy on the radio thinking it might be megaesophagus, and I Googled it, and I scared the heck out of myself. I'm hoping the crazy vet is wrong, and I'm hoping I'm wrong too. But it's something to watch out for, okay?
Okay. Should I be watching? So far, it hasn't really happened with food. We do water down her food, kind of, make it a bit of a soup in her bowl.
That's perfect. And use a slow feeder too as well. But go on.
Okay, she hasn't been doing this with the food, despite it being all watered down. Is that if she does start doing it with the food, it obviously I would expect if it progresses to that, then definitely requires even more immediate attention, I would think, eh?
I would think so, sir. Let's hope it's not, and let's just avoid the ice and slow her down when she's drinking, and give her lots of hugs and cuddles and see where this goes.
All right. Thank you very much.
All right.
Take care.
Take care. 902-405-6000. We've got Dr. Jeff Goodall to the top of the hour. Got some room for you as well if you'd like to get in a question. If you'd like to talk to the vet, give us a call at 902-405-6000. We'll continue with Ask the Vet when we come back. All right, continuing with our Ask the Vet segment with Dr. Jeff Goodall, runs the Sunnyview Animal Care Center in Bedford. Give us a buzz at 902-405-6000. Matthew's done just that. Hello, Matthew.
Hey, Todd. Hi, Dr. Goodall. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Quick question. I've got two Welsh Springer Spaniels, both in very good shape, no health concerns, no eating concerns, really no concerns with them. My question is, I do a lot of running with these two dogs, anywhere from 5K to 10K, use common sense as far as the weather goes. If it's hot, we're not out. My question is, I guess during the runs, they typically have access to water as well. There's a river that we frequent so they can get in, get some water. It's not standing water, it's running water. My question is, do I need to think about, I don't even know if electrolytes apply to dogs, or just kind of thinking about hydration in summertime, and dogs that are getting lots and lots of activity. Do I need to do anything other than just lots of cool, fresh water?
It's a good question. I've actually I dealt with it when I was a horse vet. I don't know if there's electrolyte solutions out there for dogs specifically. For the listening audience, I'm just going to say, just be very careful with your dog on, obviously this gentleman's training the dogs in a sense, or trained them for the distances, but just be careful with your pet on these longer walks and stay hydrated, but don't overhydrate. No sports drinks. I know that because they are not formulated for your dog's electrolyte needs. A collapsible bowl with a bottle for the listening audience is probably the way to go, but don't let them gulp water. Beware of overheating, because that's the thing that's really been worrisome lately for the listening audience. So, the excessive panting and what have you. Okay, protect the feet, by the way. Let's not forget that with the heat. Getting them used to wearing boots or going in the very early morning hours or very late. Cool the dog down, or your dogs down after a vigorous run. walking the last few minutes to cool down those tired muscles is a great idea. So that's for the listening audience. For you specifically, there is probably something for electrolytes in dogs, but I would be a little cautious. I don't trust a lot of these, I won't even say they're well-meaning companies that produce things for people's needs. Like there's wipes are overdone. There's powders to put on the food that are overdone. I mean, powder to make the teeth better. Let's be straight. If there was powder to make your teeth healthier, your dentist would be recommending it. So I'd be very cautious about products that are out there without having a chat. It's worth an email to your vet. Maybe he or she can do the research for you. I honestly have never been asked that, so I have nothing else to say. But for the general listening audience, you mentioned, sir, you're getting them into the river and it's a fast or flowing river. That's great. Just make sure, again, that you hose them off when you get home. Blue-green algae can still exist in running water. And don't let them over-drink when they're out. Don't let them overdo it.
Yeah. Okay. No, I was just curious. The dogs have been doing this for a while, and afterwards, never any issue, and their appetite's good, and peeing and all that stuff is good. But I was just kind of curious if I need to think about anything. So
I'll supplement maybe for their joint health, like glucosamine chondroitin might be an idea that comes to mind.
Yep. Okay. Great. Thanks for the info.
All right. Take care. 902-405-6000. Cindy, hello.
Hi, yes, thanks for taking my call. Just a quick question around flea and tick medication and the topical application versus the oral medication. Is one better than the other, and do they both affect the bloodstream?
It's not a quick question, unfortunately. So, okay, the topical there's only one available that's really effective. That's Advantix, and it does not get absorbed into the bloodstream. Advantage Multi, which is a flea and deworming together, there is part of that product that goes into the bloodstream. So that might be where some of that might be coming from. Advantix is a very effective product, 98% effect, used monthly. But if you're in a high tick area, high tick infestation area, use it every 3 weeks. The orals are, yes, in the bloodstream. There's nothing wrong with those products. They're mostly what are called IGRs or insect growth regulators, though some have other things with them. They're safe. I don't necessarily tend to recommend them over the topicals, only because I worry or I'm concerned about the family, not just the dog or cat. There's Profender for cats for ticks, by the way. And Profender, I think, has a part that is absorbed into the skin, into the bowel. But anyway, I like the topicals more, or I tend to favor them more, because it's typically that Advantix will stop ticks from even wanting to bite your dog, which means they don't get Trojan horsed into your home. Having said that, the Atlantic spray made out of Acadia University, it didn't work for my dog, but I've had clients believe that it works for theirs. So there's another spray on. It's got lemongrass. It smells great. I used to spray it on my dog's bandana, especially, and have her on Advantix. So there's an option for you. Other naturopathic things, Amber and all these other products, I don't know. I don't think they work. I think that the clients who think they work are just their pet's not running into ticks. But boy, that's a long answer to your question. I hope it touched on the high points.
No, that's great. And is Advantix 2 the same as Advantix? Is that the same thing?
Yes. I don't know why they put the 2 on there, but yes, that's exactly the same thing. And you can buy it at pet stores. You can buy it online. I wouldn't trust online too much, but you can buy it at pet stores or your vet.
Okay, that's great. Thanks very much.
Okay, Cindy, good luck. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right, Dr. Jeff, always great. Appreciate it very much. Lots of calls, lots of great questions.
Hey, thanks for having me on. Be kind to everybody out there and your pets. Have a great summer. I'll talk to you in a month.
Okay, take care, Dr. Jeff Goodall. That's our Ask the Vet segment. Thanks, everybody, for participating. It's a great segment, and big thanks to Dr. Jeff Goodall for volunteering an hour of his time every month. It's very much appreciated. I'd like to thank Vanessa Van and us on the other side of the glass. The control board's doing a fine job, as always. We're back tomorrow at 10 o'clock. See you then.